For a lot of leaders, maybe they're not comfortable in posting. What's kind of the first stage just to get them used to being more visible on platforms like LinkedIn and then maybe different phases of that strategy?
I want to normalize first for anyone who feels nervous about posting on LinkedIn, completely normal. And I think I tell this story in the book or I mention it on LinkedIn as well when I post, but even when I worked at LinkedIn, I was very nervous to post, even though that was part of my job, right? To put content out there. And it is scary. It's tied to your name, your professional identity. So I want to normalize those feelings first. And I also want to remind people. I think sometimes when it comes to posting, people think, "Oh my gosh, I have to come up with like a groundbreaking idea or I have to be so original or sound so smart." And really what people value is hearing your experience, hearing your stories. It does not have to be groundbreaking. There's always going to be someone else out there talking about the same thing that you are. But what really differentiates you is your specific experiences, again, your story, your vulnerabilities, your challenges, like sharing all of that on LinkedIn does really well and people really appreciate that. But for people who are perhaps a bit nervous to post, I totally get it. What I like to suggest is to start commenting first. So comment on other people's posts. And when you do that, you are still creating content, right? Comments are still content. You can grow your following that way, grow your visibility that way, share your insights in the comments, but it's a little bit less intimidating than I'm going to make an entirely fresh post directly from my profile. Comments are a little bit more under the radar, but still very impactful.
Well, and I see from your large following, and I get this question asked a lot by leaders that, I've been posting every day for years and I still don't see it jump up. There's not exponential growth. Maybe perhaps share some of your story to say, when you started and kind of when did you see that exponential growth in your following happen and what were the reasons for that?
My following really grew first, well, of course, while being at LinkedIn. And at that time, there was not as many people posting. And I was, I mentioned I was scared to post, but I was still doing it. And so I think simply putting yourself out there, that takes consistency, it takes time. And so I was doing that for 6 years while I was at LinkedIn. And so consistency is really key. A lot of people do give up once they don't see results. And I would say that's not the right thing to do. You have to stick with it before you start seeing that traction. The second thing I would say is it's not common to get, I think, a viral post, which is maybe what some of these people want. And I wouldn't even say that viral is good. Of course, you can get a lot of followers that way, but you really want to make sure you have the right audience, not just a bunch of random people who don't necessarily fit into what you are trying to do. So don't chase virality, chase more quality connections. Like instead of looking at the engagement numbers, I would judge my success based on inbound leads, the messages, types of messages I'm getting and from who, right? The new people I can meet or I can reach out to who I want to talk to and who are accepting of my request because they see I have a strong LinkedIn presence. So things like that, I think more qualitative are better things to look at because we can't really control the LinkedIn algorithm and sort of how things get visible. And the third thing I would suggest, Charles, is I'm not sure if these folks who come to you are sharing more personal stories, but I think that's a really critical piece. I was someone starting off who used to very much share educational content, very much like how to, 3 tips, which is still important and still valuable. But like I said before, there's a lot of people talking about these things. And what's going to help people connect to you or want to hear from you is knowing your story, talk about your challenges, your experiences, then you can still go into the tips, but sharing a little bit more of your personal story, I think goes a long way and something that can be a little harder to do, but is higher impact.
That is so critical. And I just wanted to underscore that because so many people I see just share educational content. You need to share about yourself. You need to be perceived as authentic. And like you said before, you have a unique story, experiences, and that's what makes you unique. You don't have to be the expert, but you're an expert based on these experiences, and that's going to help people. But they really need to connect with you on a more emotional, deeper level if you want them to really engage with what you're doing. And the other thing that really stood out to me, because I've heard this from many other thought leaders as well, is you have to be consistent on these platforms for a long period of time. You aren't going to get this kind of following that you have or others have by posting every other week a couple for 6 months to 8 months. It's every day for years. And if you play the long game, it's going to reap rewards and making sure that you connect well with your audience.